So we continue with part 2 of the law of sin and death. So we read in Romans chapter 7 from verses 20, Romans chapter 7 from verse 12 that says, so the Torah truly is set apart, and the command is set apart, and righteous and good. So if we do not have the law, if we do not have the commands, how do we know what sin is? How do we know that you are not supposed to sleep with your mother and your father, and you're not supposed to look at the nakedness of your mother and your father? You're not supposed to be able to tattoo your body. You're not supposed to be able to sleep with an animal or sleep with your brother or your sister and do all these things. Those are not even written in the 10 Commandments. But you see, if we don't have the mishpatim, if we don't have right rulings, if we don't have the instructions, if we don't have these things that has been written down, how are we going to know what's right from what's wrong? And that is why you see, we are living in a lawless society, because not even the 10 Commandments is being kept. That's why people will just commit adultery. That's why people will covet. That's why people do all these things. That's why people will keep breaking the commandments. Why? So for you to turn around and say that I don't need to be able to have the law, then you are saying that I don't need to keep the commands, because the commands is part of the law. So what are you saying? Then that means that according to, let's go and read, remember, in the Garden of Eden, all they needed was to break one command. He gave them a command to say, do not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Because you see, we have our own knowledge, we have our own understanding. Man does what they think is right in their own eyes. But he said, eat only from the tree of life. Eat only from his words. Eat only from this Bible, because everything else is going to be able to be what man thinks that they can do, which is right in their own eyes. So in Revelation chapter 22, verses 14, it says, blessed are those doing his commandments, so that the authority shall be theirs unto the tree of life, to enter through the gates into the city. So beloveds, if we are not going to keep his commands, doing his commands, you are not going to eat from the tree of life. Because that is what you need to do in order to enter in and eat from the tree of life. It's not all the little religious acts that we do and the religious things that we do. It's being able to eat from the tree of life, because we are doing his commandments. And that is part of the Torah. That is part of the law. So let's go back to Romans chapter 7, verses 25, where he says, thanks to Yahuah, through Yahushua, Messiah, our master. So then, with the mind, I myself truly serve the Torah of Yahuah. But with the flesh, the Torah of sin. So in my mind, my will, my emotions, I am supposed to be serving the Torah of Yahuah, which is what says that it is set apart and it is righteous. But with my flesh, I am serving the Torah of sin, which is lawlessness. So therefore, in verse 1 of chapter 8, it says, there is then now no condemnation to those who are in Messiah Yahushua, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. Why? Because Yahushua has now come to write the law on the tablets of our hearts, that we have now no excuse to walk in the flesh by being disobedient to his ways and to his Torah and to his laws. For the Torah of the Spirit of life in Messiah has set me free from the Torah of sin and death. So the Torah of life, the real Torah of Yahuah, which is where Yahushua has come to write the Torah upon the tablets of my heart. And we will look at this in the next teaching, which he says when we spoke in Hebrews chapter 10, where he talks about the laws being written on the tablets of our hearts. He says, having sent his own son. So he says, for the Torah being powerless in that it was weak through the flesh. So the Torah on its own, without the Spirit, was not written on the tablets of the heart. It was written on tablets of stone. And Yahuah, having sent his son in the likeness of the flesh of sin, and concerning sin, condemned sin in the flesh, by being able to come and do away with the sacrificial laws, that's what was done away with, and now writes it on the tablets of our hearts, so that the righteousness of the Torah should be complete in us, so that now we have righteousness being complete in us, walking out the Torah of the Spirit, where it's by the Spirit and not by the letter, but by the Spirit. It's no longer written on tablets of stone. He wants to now write it on the tablets of our hearts. So he says, for those who live according to the flesh set their minds on matters of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit, the matters of the Spirit. For the mind of the flesh is death, but the mind of the Spirit is life and peace. So you see, we have the mind of the Spirit, where we now, by the Spirit, who is the comforter, who is the teacher, who's the one who comes to teach us the truth of the word in order for us to walk it out. He says, because the mind of the flesh is enmity towards Yahuah, it does not subject itself to the Torah of Yahuah, neither indeed is it able. Why? Because it was written on the tablets of stone, but he sent prophet upon prophet, they didn't keep it. Why? Because it was never by the Spirit, because they stopped him giving them the Spirit on Mount Sinai. And those who are in the flesh are unable to please Yahuah. But you are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit. For if indeed the Spirit of Yahuah dwells in you, and if anyone does not have the Spirit of Messiah, this one is not his. The same as then you are not the one that is going to be able to, then you are of the devil, because you are full of sin, you are lawless. And if Messiah is not in you, the body is truly dead on account of sin, but the Spirit is life on account of righteousness, because now we have no excuse. We walk out his commands. And if the Spirit of him who raised you, Yahushua, from the dead dwells in you, he who raised Messiah from the dead shall also give life to your mortals' bodies through the Spirit dwelling in you. So then, brothers, we are not debtors to the flesh, to live according to the flesh. If you live according to the flesh, you are going to die. That's the law of death. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you shall live. For as many as are led by the Spirit of Yahuah, these are the sons of Yahuah. So that is why, if we go look and we see in Hebrews, let's just quickly go to Hebrews, and we're going to go to Hebrews chapter 10, and it says in Hebrews chapter 10, this is the covenant that I shall make with them after those days, says Yahuah, giving my laws into their hearts, and in their minds I shall write them, and their sins and their lawlessness I shall remember no more, because now we have no more excuse. Why? Because in Hebrews chapter 8, he says, for finding fault with them, he never found fault with his law, he found fault with the people. And this is the thing. So we will, in part 3, have a look at then Hebrews chapter 8 for us to be able to understand who did he find fault with and what is the Father actually doing in terms of the renewed covenant that he has given us. Shalom, shalom.